It is April of 2021, and something has gone quietly wrong in the drive-through lane. At Long John Silver's, at Texas Roadhouse, at thousands of fast food counters across the United States, employees are rationing a substance most people have never once thought to consider a scarce resource. The Wall Street Journal is reporting it. The Wall Street Journal. Prices for individual condiment packets have jumped 13% in a single year. The Center for Disease Control has told restaurants to stop using reusable condiment containers, to keep tables covered in single-use sachets instead. In America, locked indoors, ordering delivery 3 times a week, terrified of a shared bottle, has responded exactly as you'd expect. It has torn through the national supply of ketchup packets. Kraft Heinz, the single largest producer of the things on Earth, will announce it is ramping up production by 25%, aiming to push out more than 12 billion packets a year just to keep pace. 12 billion of a condiment that costs a fraction of a cent to make. Think about that for a second. An entire industrial supply chain thrown into crisis by a 2-inch foil pouch of tomato paste, sugar, and vinegar. But the story does not start here. It starts 350 years earlier on the southeastern coast of China, in a world that had never seen a tomato. The word ketchup is not American, is not even Western. Linguists trace it back to the Hokkien dialect spoken in the port cities of Fujian province, where local fishermen and traders made a pungent, salty liquid called ku tsayab, a fermented fish brine, dark and umami-rich, used the way soy sauce is used today. By the late 1600s, English and Dutch sailors working the trade routes through the South China Sea and the port of Amoy had tasted it, loved it, and started hauling barrels of it home. They could not, however, get the fish, so they improvised. That improvisation is the real hinge of this story. Back in England, cooks began experimenting with anything salty, dark, and pungent they could find to recreate the flavor of a sauce from a place most of them would never visit. Mushrooms, walnuts, oysters, anchovies. By 1742, the English writer Richard Bradley had published a recipe for mushroom ketchup, thick, brown, briny, and nothing whatsoever like the ketchup sitting in your refrigerator right now. For roughly 150 years, ketchup did not mean tomato. It meant a category, a fermented, vinegary, umami condiment that could be made from almost anything except, ironically, the ingredient we now associate with it entirely. The tomato itself had a trust problem. Brought back from the Americas by Spanish colonizers in the 1500s, it spent centuries in Europe under suspicion of being poisonous, largely because wealthy families ate off pewter plates high in lead, and the tomato's acidity leached the metal into their food, making people who ate it sick. Nobody understood the chemistry. They just understood that rich people who ate tomatoes sometimes died, and so the tomato earned a nickname, the poison apple. It would take until the early 1800s for that reputation to fully crack. The man usually credited with the turn is James Mees, a Philadelphia physician and horticultural writer, who in 1812 published what's considered the first known recipe combining tomatoes with the ketchup tradition. No sugar yet, and interestingly, no vinegar either, which meant his version spoiled fast and stayed a regional curiosity for decades. It took American entrepreneurs, not chefs, to turn tomato ketchup into a business. In 1837, a Philadelphia grocer named Jonas Yerkes became the first person credited with bottling and distributing tomato ketchup nationally, selling it as a shelf-stable product rather than a homemade one. That was 1837. Ketchup was no longer a recipe. It was becoming an industry. Which brings us to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and to a 20-year-old horseradish salesman named Henry Heinz, who had already built a small food preservation business by 1876 when he launched his own tomato catsup, spelled at the time with a C. Heinz understood something his competitors didn't. In an era before refrigeration, before the FDA, before any real regulation of what went into processed food, the average American housewife did not trust store-bought sauces. Adulteration was rampant. Sawdust and flour, chalk and milk, coal tar dyes and candy. Heinz's slogan, blessed relief from mother and the other women in the household, wasn't just selling convenience. It was selling trust at a moment when trust in industrial food was in short supply. This decision seemed small at the time. It was not. In 1906, Heinz threw his company's weight behind the passage of the Pure Food and Drug Act, lobbying Congress directly at a moment when most food manufacturers were fighting regulation tooth and nail, terrified of what inspections might reveal about their own products. Heinz had nothing to hide. His ketchup, unlike most on the market, didn't need sodium benzoate as a preservative because his team had already reformulated the recipe with a higher vinegar and sugar content, partly for taste, partly, it turns out, as a preservation strategy. When the law passed and benzoate-laden ketchups suddenly looked suspicious on shelves next to Heinz's pure bottle, Heinz didn't just survive the regulatory shakeup. He wanted that octagonal glass bottle, introduced around 1890, patented for its distinctive shape, combined with the 57 varieties slogan launched in 1896, turned a horseradish salesman's side product into the most recognizable condiment brand on the planet. For the next 50 years, Ketchup's story is mostly a story of scale, bigger factories, bigger tomato farms, a wartime economy that made cheap, shelf-stable, calorie-dense condiments more valuable than ever. But the object we actually came here to talk about, the packet, does not exist yet, and its invention has almost nothing to do with ketchup at all. In 1955, two men named Harold Ross and Yale Kaplan filed a U.S. patent for something they called a dispensing container for liquids. It wasn't designed for ketchup specifically. It was designed for sauce and syrup broadly. A flat, sealed pouch that could be torn or squeezed to release a single serving of liquid, cheap enough to manufacture by the millions and disposable enough to never wash a bottle again. This decision seemed small at the time. It was not. Ross and Kaplan weren't trying to reinvent the condiment industry. They were solving a packaging problem. But what they'd actually built was the foundation for an entirely new relationship between Americans and their food. One where nothing needed to be shared, refilled, or returned ever again. And here is the twist almost nobody knows. Heinz, the company whose name is now synonymous with the ketchup packet, did not adopt the format until more than a decade later. It wasn't until around 1967 that Heinz began rolling out single-serve packets at scale, and the reason had nothing to do with hygiene or thrift. It had to do with cars. America in the late 1960s was a country falling in love with the drive through, the road trip, the meal eaten at 60 miles an hour with a steering wheel as a table. Heinz realized that a nation eating in motion needed a ketchup that could travel. No bottle, no mess, no returning it to a diner counter. This decision seemed small at the time. It was not. It arrived at the exact moment fast food chains like McDonald's were exploding across the interstate system, and the two trends fused into something inseparable. The modern fast food meal, complete with its little foil and plastic packet, sitting at the bottom of a paper bag. Now for the part of this story that isn't nostalgic at all. Behind every one of those trillions of packets sits a tomato, and behind every tomato sits a field. And for much of the 20th and 21st centuries, those fields in the United States, particularly in Florida, which supplies a huge share of the winter tomato crop that eventually becomes processed sauce and ketchup base, were worked under conditions that federal prosecutors would later describe, in multiple criminal cases, as modern-day slavery. Between the 1990s and 2010s, the coalition of Immokalee workers helped expose and prosecute a string of forced labor operations in Florida's tomato fields, cases involving debt bondage, violence, and workers held against their will to pick the very crop that feeds America's condiment industry. It took a sustained, years-long boycott campaign, aimed not at ketchup companies directly, but the fast food chains and supermarkets that bought from these supply chains, before major buyers agreed to a fair food program guaranteeing basic labor protections. The sauce is cheap. It has never been free. There's a second, quieter cost, and it's the one sitting in landfills right now. Because of how condiment packets are made, a thin laminate of plastic and foil, fused together for a perfect seal, they are functionally unrecyclable almost everywhere in the world. Not difficult to recycle, not sometimes recyclable, essentially never recycled at any real scale by any municipal system. And the numbers here are staggering enough to make the 2021 packet shortage look almost sentimental by comparison. In 2018 alone, roughly 855 billion single-use condiment packets were sold globally. Ketchup, soy sauce, mustard hot sauce, mayonnaise, all of it. 855 billion. One estimate for surface coverage put that volume at enough packets to blanket the entire land area of the planet. And the trend is not slowing down. Industry projections put global consumption on pace to hit 1.3 trillion packets a year by 2027. Heinz alone has pledged to make its packaging recyclable, reusable, or compostable. But the pledge was made for the year 2025, and the packets keep moving. So where does that leave us today? A condiment that began as fermented fish brine on the coast of Fujian is now produced, packaged, and discarded at a scale that defies ordinary comprehension. Heinz alone ships more than 12 billion single-serve packets a year in the U.S. market. Ketchup, in one form or another, sits in the refrigerators of an estimated 97% of American households. And no, that is not something anyone made up. It's one of the most cited figures in American food marketing, repeated so often it's practically folklore, and yet it keeps checking out. Here's the part that sounds like a punchline, but genuinely isn't. Ketchup, in its packet form, has already left the planet. NASA has flown liquid condiments, ketchup among them, aboard the space shuttle and to the International Space Station, precisely because loose salt and pepper are useless in zero gravity. Granules simply float away and can clog equipment or drift into an astronaut's eye. A sealed, squeezable packet, on the other hand, works exactly the same whether you're in a Florida drive-thru or 250 miles above it. And food scientists designing meals for future long-duration Mars missions are, right now, studying shelf-stable, high-acid, vinegar preserved sauces, the Heinz recipe's basic 1876 chemistry, as a model for condiments that can survive years of travel without refrigeration. The same preservation trick Henry Heinz used to beat regulators in 1906 may end up being part of what keeps astronauts sane on the way to another planet. So trace the whole arc, start to finish. Fermented fish sauce, then colonial improvisation, then poisoned apple suspicion, then Pittsburgh industry, then wartime packaging innovation, then drive-through convenience, then global environmental liability, then, somehow, spaceflight cuisine. A fish brine from Fujian became a British condiment category, became an American industrial product, became a road trip staple, became a planetary waste crisis, became a candidate for interplanetary food science. And in the end, the truly strange part isn't the tomatoes, or the vinegar, or even the trillion packet number. It's that nobody at any point in 3.5 centuries, not the fishermen of Fujian, not Henry Heinz, not two patent filing packaging engineers in 1955, ever set out to build the most argued over, most wasted, most quietly ubiquitous object in the modern food system. They were just trying to keep a sauce from spoiling. If you enjoyed this, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling us which part of ketchup's history surprised you the most. And make sure to like this video so more people can find it.